morning and welcome to The Point. It is Tuesday, May 4th, 2021. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN, Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, the GBN Production YouTube channel, the website www.gbn.gd, GBN TV channel 7, 11 and 20. Good morning to the listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9 and the viewers on Party Grenada and Go to FET Facebook pages. Always a pleasure to have you tuning in to the programs here at the GBN. And this morning, our virtual guest for To The Point is youth activist and former Senator Ron Redhead. Good morning, Ron. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Blossom. I am doing pretty okay. I'm just cool, enjoying the weather, but I'm doing good.
All right. Nice to know, sir. All right. Let's get into it. We have a few things to cover this morning. And let us start with... Let's start with one of the prevalent issues currently, the fight for 4% as it is coined. That fight has been on since, you can say, the end of January, so it has been roughly February, March, April, almost 4 months now. And a lot of people are saying this is stretching into the period of it could be termed going on too long. What's your take on what's happening with the 4%? I wonder if I should ask, which side of the fence are you on, government or the teachers and public officers?
Well, it's a good question. I am not necessarily on a side, but I support the workers. Today I have on my red shirt, and it is in solidarity with the workers' movement, the labor movement, for their just cause. Now, I do not only look at the 4% issue as the major issue facing workers today. There are many others. And I think if that 4% is resolved, the labor movement can get into doing what is most important to the majority of workers throughout. You have the nurses, teachers, and the general public officers. They all have their unique challenges. So I think that 4%, it's a given. It must be paid. It should be paid. And I would encourage government to make haste on that negotiated and signed deal already. I'm looking forward to hear what the ruling would be from the Minister of Labour, and then I would make further pronouncements on it personally. I think that the workers deserve it, and the government's excuse is that the reduction in taxes is not allowing for them to pay and all these other things. I think that is just excuses, because while tax revenues, it has fallen, we see that other revenues have actually increased. Take, for example, exports. Government, for example, now have access to Grenlec and that special funds to do little community projects and that sort of thing. Government are also, they are also charging people for COVID-19 tests. So, and that's $400+ a piece, easy. So they are making monies outside of the ambit of collections of taxes, and they have resources available that they can make the payment to the workers. That's the truth about it.
I'm glad you brought up the economic side of it, because that was going to be my next question. In terms of the repercussions, the fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic, it has been a year and change since the world really started to lock down and the economy started to get hit. What are your thoughts on how Grenada has been faring during these tough economic times? What can government as well implement that it can help spur more economic activities and raise revenues, much needed revenues?
Yes, well, the economic situation in Grenada is difficult post-COVID-19 and throughout the world. So it's not only unique to Grenada, and that is the frustration. Whereas we could have gotten assistance outside to help stem the tide, we can't. So growth, development generally has been stymied to an extent because of COVID. Not so much of the virus, but the impact on the economy. So you have high unemployment rates. You have the situation of poverty continuing to climb. It is getting more and more difficult, because if people do not have jobs and they have to meet commitments, they have to meet obligations, they cannot do so. I would say that government has to look at a different model, not to upset the whole apple cart. I'm not saying get rid of tourism. I'm not saying get rid of these things, but they have to look at a different model. I could recall before COVID hit, I was on this said program. you were the host, I think, and we were discussing the important issue as to what would happen. And the daily paid workers, these were the people that we identified, at least in that conversation, who would have been hit first. That happened. Today, the daily paid workers are still feeling the rippling effects due to the lockdown measures and the inactivity generally of the economy. The money is not there to spend on leisure and so on. So promoters, taxi operators, these groupings have a tremendous challenge to generate revenues, and the tourism sector is not operating. So a different model is needed, not in the sense to change that what exists now, but to enhance and add. So for example, diversification, agriculture, ICT, generating new jobs and opportunities which exist elsewhere, but we should just incorporate it now into our economic structure, which will help to give the unemployed some employment and provide an income in their pockets so that they can begin to spend and economic activities can be spurred. Again, the whole question of a stimulus. No, I believe that government has not passed a sufficient stimulus package. $50 million is not enough, and we are seeing the rippling effects of that. We needed more than that. St. Kitts and Nevis, during the height of COVID and its impact, passed a $120 million stimulus package, and they have less people residing in St. Kitts and Nevis as opposed to Grenada. So we have to do more. And I don't really buy the rationale that government is comparing its obligation with the 4% to the workers and the other sectors in the economy who are impacted, in the sense that while you have a responsibility for the other sectors, you cannot compare an obligation that you must meet. This is something that was signed and agreed upon. You have to pay the workers monthly, and public officers generally are protected by the Constitution of Grenada. So that cannot be compared. I believe that if things return to somewhat normal, you would be able to see that the taxi operators may not need a direct assistance. What they may need now is possibly maybe concessions, some kind of gas reduction, so that they can be able to move easier and afford things, because things have gotten difficult. So they may not need direct cash if things return to normal. So what should be done? A better approach should be dealt with the workers' movement and try to bring the process towards a point of getting the vaccine, getting the economy to reopen, paying the 4%, and normalizing things in the country. But what we see, honestly, is aggression. The tone from government ministers, the stance, anybody who opposes, look at the detention of the GUT president. So there are a number of things that I think economic-wise we have to do differently, and we must try and shape our minds towards that difference, because right now we can't continue at the same rate we are going.
In the midst of dealing with a worldwide economic crunch, here locally we are seeing or feeling as well the increase in prices of a number of things. Flour, animal feed, gas prices over $15 but we still have salaries not increasing. And I think that is a problem and issue for a lot of people. What can we as citizens do to help cushion the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic?
That's a very interesting question. But as citizens right now, the question of financial management is a key component to survival. And financial management, not on a business level only, but on a personal level, your income. Some people have resources, they get income, but it's not being managed and utilized properly. So they tend to run red by the end of the month, and they have to go to a lending institution or borrow from family members, etc. But if you sit and budget and plan now it's time for some deep personal, I think, management of our finances. And that will also help to be able to guide and shape policies in the long run. Because again, it comes down to a question of priorities. As I say it, government has its obligation. and government must be raising taxes, etc. They must be spending in the economy in the sense that they need to repair roads, they have to do other upgrades to buildings, etc. But during the pandemic, what I find personally is taking place is an exploitation of the situation. While I understand that workers may not be able to get a substantial amount of assistance, but I take strong offense that during a pandemic, when things are supposedly worse, according to the government, we are spending monies to do little projects. So I'll give you a very basic example. In the bus terminal, the Sotes bus stand, when rain would fall, it would have normally wet people there. And, government has placed a covering there now. That is good. That is something that has been called for, and it's good that it's there. However, when things were good economically, according to the government, they did not do that. Now things are bad, they are doing that. So a question of priority during a pandemic and spending the monies wisely to get the necessary effect that you want to stabilize things, it comes to the mind. And as I said, individually, you need to do your own management. This is my recommendation, but I think government has to set its priority right and build from strength to strength coming out of the pandemic.
Okay, you make a valid point. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about is in recent weeks, you have been part of a group of young people doing meetings island-wide. So first of all, what spurred this group to come together? And what is the aim of the group? Are you thinking of forming your own party, possibly? The lot of you?
Well, it's not a political party. No. And I don't think the individuals are interested in that. It's just young people looking for an opportunity, an avenue to speak. We have seen globally, all right, internationally, that movements normally come up from underground, etc. And their purpose, while some people always deem it political, but their purpose is very important in the whole equation of the thing. I am not saying that the individuals do not have political affiliation to other organizations, etc. But for now, this particular group with the youth, we are speaking to issues nationally, and we are talking directly to the young people. They are relating to us, and the message is resonating. This has nothing to do with a party or a particular party, but it's part of our contribution as young people to the collective need for change in the country. So it's not a political organization.
What was the response like from the people who have been a part of the meetings, or even the people who know that you're having the meeting but haven't attended personally? What has the response been like?
Oh, it has been very nice. They like to hear the messages. It's very important that young people speak to these things. And as I said, it's resonating. So the response generally seemed to be, talk about these things, talk about that. We like to hear these things because it's important. And given the situation with COVID, it is ideal for more young people to join and speak out, not necessarily just to castigate one side and exonerate the other. But what we are talking about is systematic changes that we see as a result of COVID, but has been there for a long time. And we consider them to be underlying conditions, which are, in a sense, limiting our growth as a people and as a nation in terms of development, true development. And we are speaking to those issues. That's really what it is about, and we are calling for change.
Speaking of calling for change, a lot of people have been calling for the change to be at the hands of young people, for young people to step up and take charge of the country, politically. And your name has been one of the names that have been floated around in terms of taking the charge, as well as some of the other people who have been on the platforms. And while you say this is not a political party, is this something that you've given consideration to? Whereas even if you don't form a political party, but an organization like we have TGM, but forming an organization of young people and not just going around and speaking, but you can form the youth political party, the YPP, or the youth movement, the YM. I'm just coming up with names on the spur. But is this something that you've given thought to in terms of taking it a step further?
Right. Well, we have heard the conversation, to be very honest. We are not particularly, driven by power and authority. The history of young people totally in control of the country has not been so kind to Grenada. And therefore, it will be a travesty to try to repeat the exact model. What I would say, genuinely, as young people, we want to contribute to the development of the nation. We are young. We are energetic. We are creative, among other aspects, right? You have the intellectuals, professionals, etc. Now, if you have a situation where you need to move the country forward, which group of people are best placed to do that now? It's not to say that we are going to sideline. It's not to say that it is us versus them kind of scenario, but it's a combination or a coming together of all the forces, whether young people, whether some of the other groups that you call, political parties like the NDC and so on, building and working together to make changes in the country. And this is what it has to be. I don't think that we can go on a road show independently and just talk about this thing and try to elevate ourselves as young people only. What we must do is work together with all of our people. As I said, if it has to be led by the young people, then so be it. Most changes throughout the world, in the history of the world, was led by young people. I'll just give one simple example. Jesus was a young man when he did what he did, right? And he changed, that's according to biblical teachings, and he changed the dimensions of things. So the role and significance of youth must not only be seen when around election time and they can give you the majority of votes in a particular constituency, but they must be utilized properly and not in a way that is piecemeal. And you're just placing somebody on a board and you're just saying, well, we have a youth here and we have a youth there. But they must actually be working to it. And this is what we are doing. That's why we are leading this public charge. I don't think no other political organization is going out there at this present time and speaking to issues. But this youth group is doing so. And we are committed to doing so because these things have to be said for us to be able to influence the changes that we need in society.
And is it that, and we note that you are, because that's what the information I have, I don't know if it has changed, but you are a member of the NDC, and some of the other people on the platform as well have been members of the NDC. I can't remember if I've seen members of other political parties as well. But is it that you all are not happy with what is taking place in the parties that you're affiliated with? Or is it that you just want the opportunity to speak on your own behalf?
Yeah, it's the latter. Even if we have concerns within NDC, that is our right, and that could be handled at the level which it would be handled. And that's not an issue so much as to why we are speaking out. As I said, we are not on the platform criticizing political organizations and so on that we belong to. What we are talking about is the situation of the longest serving regime in the country, and the lack of some key development areas which we see as deficits. And COVID-19 came. It highlighted the majority of them. And there were some existing, but were not being spoken about. The whole issue, as we speak now, of the question of victimization, intimidation, this is a problem. It has been around for eons of years. And the fact is, what we need to do now is not just speak about it, but mobilize and organize to change it. And take for example, let me give you a very direct example. We have to pass something to outlaw political discrimination from every sector and grouping in society, including the public service. Public servants are Grenadians too, and the Constitution gives them the right to participate freely of their choice in political activities and operations. If there is an NDC working in the ministry of X or Y, they should not be moved or put in a room where you have asbestos or some kind of stuffy environment just to frustrate them so that they can leave. That is wrong. They must be allowed to participate. They must know when to draw the line. And that's where business ethics come into mind, and you apply it accordingly. But these things have to be removed. You can't be vexing with people when they raise issues. So we don't have any issues with NDC. Make it absolutely clear. What we have the issue with is the society and the system. And we see ourselves that we are talking about it at different levels in our party and our groupings. And if it is that people don't really share our view, what we are going to go out there do is to go out there and speak and spread our message positively for changes in the country. So it's not that. I know how it is. Oh gosh, people like to spread a lot of.
Just make it sure. And one of the people on the platform, the youth platform, has spoken out about allegations of victimization against her. Ashida Charles, Facebookers may know her as Navia Newman, and she has spoken out about being victimized for the way that she speaks out against things that she's unhappy with. Has that affected the way that you conduct meetings, meaning the entire group, and have you personally experienced that kind of victimization?
Yes. So yes to all the questions that you spoke of. Now, one of the challenges that we see as young people, as young activists generally, is that whenever you speak out and you have a view on something, it doesn't matter where you are. You're always looked upon as if, well, you may not have the right to speak that because you don't have the experience, you're young, that kind of thing. I honestly believe why our sister, Ashida, is being attacked is not simply because she is just speaking out on Facebook as a activist, social media activist, but her message is resonating because the majority of it is true. And how it is depicted is not being depicted in the type of language that you would speak at this interview or some professional setting. It is being depicted in a very ordinary tone and manner that even the layman can understand. When you speak up there, only the professionals and the intellectuals can understand. But when you speak below, everybody can understand. And I think that is why they are attacking her. She is not alone. Michelle Alexander, Anishelle Thomas, a NNP activist, I must say youth activist, they were attacked for what they spoke of when she did a social media video talking about the ills that young people are facing. So essentially, what we are doing and what we are highlighting is that we have all been victimized, and I've been victimized personally. My family has a history of that from the New National Party, and that is clear. Some might try to pretend, but that's a matter for them. That is clear. But with that victimization must come the opportunity that we are going to put our feet down, and we are going to tell the people who are doing this to us, we have had enough of that. And this is an opportunity, as I say, and we see it, to speak out on those things, but not only just the victimization and our personal gripes, but to speak out on what is happening in the country, nationally, and where we see changes could be made.
Let's take a break, Mr. Redhead, and then we're going to come back and continue the discussion. Speaking with youth activist Ron Redhead, this is To The Point. We'll be right back. A message from Grenada Solid Waste Management Authority on the occasion of the International Composting Awareness Week.
On the occasion of International Composting Week, under the theme Grow, Eat, Compost, Repeat, we at the Northeast Farmers Organization want to encourage our citizens to use compost for the growing of their crops and the flowers in their homes and around the environment. Composting is better to use instead of the chemical fertilizer. There are more than one reason. When you use the material from your kitchen waste to do composting, you are reducing the amount of unnecessary gas in the environment. You are reducing the amount of material that's sent to the landfill. 40% of what is sent into the landfill is not necessarily have to be there. Because what goes into the landfill is what you see ignite or aid in the burning of the methane gas in the landfill. If you take the very same material from your kitchen and you put it in a bin in your house, around your house, and you watch how this same compost, when you put it into your vegetable, how that will grow, you'll be surprised to know that what you're doing is better for you to eat than what you use from the chemical fertilizer.
A message from Grenada Solid Waste Management Authority on the occasion of the International Composting Awareness Week.
Do you hear what I hear? Listen to the ocean, and you will hear a cry for help. The ocean is hurting, and we are the source of the hurt. but we can stop and start to heal our ocean by preventing pollution from getting into our waterways. It can start with you. Join an active organization, or better yet, make a personal commitment. Commit not for just one day in the year, but for the rest of your life. Let's dispose of our plastic and other waste responsibly, and let's start building resilience. Let the healing begin.
This message is brought to you by the OECS Commission with funding from the Government of Norway. Remlit, tackling ocean pollution from tooth to sooth.
GBN Television News at 7, a pulse on all things Grenadian. Look out for our new features through expanded synergy.
Welcome back to The Point. We're speaking with youth activist and former Senator Ron Redhead, issues of national importance. Before I go to the viewers and listeners, Mr. Redhead, let me ask, what's your stance on, well, government has been rolling out its vaccination campaign. What are your thoughts on getting vaccinated or the vaccinations? And we've been dealing with COVID-19 for the past year and a month. Where do you think we should go from here in dealing with this pandemic that seems to not be ending anytime soon?
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, good question. Vaccination for me, I am not opposed to vaccination. I have received vaccination as a little boy growing up, and I know people who have. I encourage it. The issue, I think, with the COVID-19 vaccination, and we must be honest about that, I think squarely resides around the politicians being the ones to call and advance for it. While the politician has his or her role to play in the whole grand scheme of things with COVID, I think the specialists and people who are understanding of all of the ramifications should be the one to talk about that. Because some people would require counseling to take a vaccination. Coming out and trying to scare people and using political rhetoric is not going to help the situation. And part in the issue is that government has a way that people are not, it is losing credibility, and people are not too comforted whenever it comes out to say do something or do the other. They have a way of doing it that is turn off right now during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I don't think they are the best suited grouping to do that. I strongly believe, and this is a recommendation that was raised by the NDC on one of its Sunday programs, that a collective approach should be utilized, where you have the Doctors Association, the Nurses Association, you have people in the medical field and the professionals there all coming together and doing public awareness campaigns, doing so-called town hall little meetings, that kind of things in communities where the vaccination drive is low in terms of its interest, and speaking to people, offering that service of counseling. Look, we believe also that what you should do is get an assessment. So doctors now should set up, you should be able to set up an appointment with a doctor and get an assessment. Am I okay to take this vaccine? What are the implications? These are questions that people need answered. So just come in and say, take it or your life, and that's just political rhetoric. And when you have certain individuals in the political realm pushing that agenda, it is uncomfortable and people are not going to receive that message. So the politicians, I have personally stayed away from attacking the government's vaccination drive because I think vaccination in the whole fight with COVID has its role to play. I believe also that you must follow the protocols, etc. But as a politician or an aspiring politician, I am not going to be attacking or, telling people it's a choice. And I believe that the medical fraternity has a great role to play in disseminating information and offering some level of comfort to people where, confusion and misinformation exists. So it's a good initiative, but that is the most I will say on that.
You're echoing my thoughts because I asked my guest yesterday, it's not the message, it's the messenger that is problem and creating the hesitancy. And there's also been the conversation and statements being made that get vaccinated or lose your job. What do you think about that?
I don't support that at all. And let me just say this. It has nothing to do personally with any individual, whether it's from the tourism sector or any other sector in the country. But I think, given the situation with COVID, while we must all accept the frustration that businesses may be facing now in terms of the impact of COVID, but jobs is very critical to the whole process of rebuilding. And it will be a travesty for people to say that you would lose your job if you had it before because you didn't take a vaccine. The truth about it is, when you analyze the situation, we were able to get at zero without a vaccination. So we are not disputing that vaccine would not have a role to play, but you must allow it to be a choice. But you must support good information that can help people make the best choice. That is what should be done. So, for example, businesses, immediately, what they had to do, call their staff. Whether they section them off, you have 30 individuals on staff and you bring in 10 every 3 days, etc. But you bring in that group in, you sit with them, you have the professionals with you, somebody from the Ministry of Health, etc., explaining to the staff and work it in that manner. Not coming out on a national interview and saying, well, it's a little more than that, and the Prime Minister said it's law, so it's either a vaccine or you lose your work. That is disrespectful, and that is not going to help the situation. And while workers have a right to get on and reject that, and I believe business places have a right to enforce whatever policy they believe is in the best interest for them, but it must be done in a manner of mutual respect. So that is why I think the process and the way in which this was said had a counterproductive impact on the whole thing and message of vaccination.
Where do you think we should go from here with the fight against COVID-19?
Yes. Well, we need to get more people involved. I still hold firm to that view because I think ultimately the message becomes weaker when the messenger is known political affiliates and that sort of grouping and so on. I like the idea that vaccination is a part of the fight. I believe that should continue, but we should see more vaccines or the options being increased in terms of Sputnik, the Cuban vaccine, other vaccines that might be available for us. We should see that being made available. And the temperature of how we fight COVID, which is together, should be lowered. Because what is happening? I agree that the workers' fight might be difficult to achieve during this period, but it is just, and it is only being done so because they, in a sense, felt that they were wrong, that government just came out and announced something and they have no option and opportunity to question, to seek clarity, etc. So you have that situation. So I think the spirit going forward, post-COVID-19, should be a more neutral one. And we should try and encourage bipartisan approaches to everything that we do going forward from here until we get to a point where the economy is reopened and people can participate freely without restrictions, etc., and make a dollar and live. So I think we should change the narrative, and we should change the temperature. Ultimately, I hope we can change the government. But, I think we need some changes in the approach right now.
All right, let's invite our viewers and listeners who may have comments, questions, queries, concerns for Mr. Redhead. Now is your chance to ask them. The landline number 435-2041. That's also the WhatsApp number. Please, only written messages on WhatsApp. And you can continue to post your comments, questions, queries, concerns on the GBN Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page and the GBN Production YouTube channel. Let's go to our first caller of the program. Good morning, caller.
Morning, Blossom.
Morning.
I've been listening to Ron, right? Makes a lot of sense. A lot of points he brought up make sense. But it boils back down to the vaccine and being a political issue. I think if we look at India, we realize it's not politics. And I think we're making excuses for the people of Grenada. We are at a step higher than that. I know that. Everybody's on social media. So if the messengers are the one that's preventing the flow of the vaccine, then people like Ron if he thinks he has an influence. People as the Newman person you mentioned, people like you, Blossom, people of the NDC, if they think they could carry the message a little further, than who are the messengers now? Why aren't they doing it? Because they know this is the answer to putting an end, or almost an end, to the COVID.
Thank you, caller. Sir Redhead?
Yes, thank you, caller. Good opinion, but I would just simply say I cannot invite myself to something that I am not invited to. Now, as it relates to the NDC, and I can speak with confidence on that particular issue, when COVID came, we were invited, at least we reached out, we allowed government to engage the political organization to play its role in the grand scheme of things. We were invited to sit on a couple committees, we were invited to participate on some of them. The reality is, what occurred was that when things were bad, they will bring you, they get a little of your ideas, they get a little of your sentiments, and then they discard you when things start to go up and they are on a height and they're doing good, etc. The problem with that, caller, is that we do not believe that politicians should be the ones trying to push vaccination. They have constituency groups, they can talk to their members and so on. That's their right, they're in charge of them. But when it comes down to the nation and the confidence in someone that what they are telling me is true and what they are telling me is reassured, you need professional people to do that as it relates to vaccines. This is something that has to go inside of your body. So as opposed to us not getting the worst of COVID, and we don't know if it may come, but while we didn't get the worst, so we are a bit complacent of it. But you cannot fault people for not following the instructions of the politicians when the professionals are being sidelined, when the people who can offer, as I said, the necessary counseling and the approaches to individuals who are not willing to take a vaccine, when they are not being involved. And you can't blame in NDC for not playing its part, because we have done so. And as I said, we have contributed at a small level, but we contributed only to the extent that the regime allowed us to contribute, and not in a wider sense. So we have a role, we have a responsibility. When I go out there, I say to people, it's your choice. I can't tell a man that he should go and take the vaccine because he will die. I would not engage in that, because I don't know if that is a fact. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor. This is the responsibility of the professionals. What I think should happen, as they would do normally with the political situation, allow the nurses association, allow the doctors, allow the medical fraternity to go in different constituencies or communities and talk vaccination, not the politician, not the minister of health giving some political speech and trying to force people, and people wouldn't follow that. So that is a problem. It's just like the CCJ referendum, right? When the politicians started pushing it, you saw the interest, it waned. So it's not to say you're blaming NDC for not contributing. We are not the problem.
Comment on Facebook. Youths need to be in the lower house of parliament so they can influence decision and laws for change in the society. Agree? Disagree? I know you were a member of the upper house as well. Do you think you've been able to make an impact, or the impact that you wanted to during your time there?
Well, not necessarily, but I tried my best with the limited time. It was just over 2 years, 2 years and I think a couple weeks that I made. But notwithstanding my contribution, I agree fully with the sentiment expressed that you need young people to push forward a progressive agenda today. What we have is a stalemate in terms of what is there is essentially washed up and has been. You know, you're just going to get the same old ideas regurgitating year on year ago. So what you need is a fresh look at the situation. But in order to do that, you need new people, because change doesn't only happen. It starts with the person in the mirror, in a sense. So the individuals have to change. You need new people to bring that newness and change the direction, and not just only advance political agenda. So I support that 100%.
Let me go to WhatsApp. Somebody on WhatsApp says, bravo to you, young man, on your journey to make Grenada a better place. How do you navigate the unreasonable expectations with the realities of life in these times? You likely are aware of what happens to popularity when one is candid.
Yes, very good again. The truth is, you must just always be honest with the people. If it is you can do something, try your best to do it. And if you cannot, then you must go back to them and say that you cannot. Do not try to mislead individuals, because one of the most difficult challenges that every politician may have faced and will continue to face is the balance between a promise and reality. Now, I say so because we are beginning to approach the season for elections. Given what we have seen with COVID-19 and what we expect going forward, maybe in the next 2 to 3 years, is it reasonable to say that grandiose promises will be able to dominate, that we'll be able to just bribe people and everything will go back to normal going forward? So I think politicians have to look within themselves now and try to reimagine how they see the future and what they can actually do and say for people. And then the voters must be able to now comprehend if what X or Y is saying, if it makes sense. I like the idea that more young people should get involved in frontline politics, and I support that fully. I believe that leadership is not about one man and his or her popularity, but promoting a wider group of people. Because if I die today or tomorrow, God forbid, who replaces me, let's say if I am leading a particular organization or not. So you need to think along those lines. So the development of leadership and training in that regard for future governance of our country, I think is a deficit and is lacking. So I would like to encourage young people to get involved.
Have you ever considered contesting general elections? Which constituency do you reside in, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I reside currently at St. George Northeast. Yes, so I have considered that. I have listened to some people. I have listened to some who say, no, it's not my time, etc. So I can safely say that I am in the process of considering to make a pitch for a particular constituency. I would not name the constituency now because I don't want to preempt anything and I don't want to interfere with the process. So, but
also, it may not generally be Northeast, St. George Northeast, it could be somewhere else.
Well, I never said that, but what I said was
I'm picking sense out of nonsense, okay. Good morning, caller.
Good morning to you, Blossom. And to you, Brother Ron Redhead, you're indeed our youth ambassador. You are a very good worker, and it's quite interesting to have you in frontline politics. And I do believe that the NDC has made their contribution towards the COVID-19 situation. I remember Sister Franca Bernardine, they were, producing masks and giving out to people. And I know that they were adamant about, having to say, well, let's shut down. They came up to it a lot of opposition, so I know that they have played their role. Continue to do what you do, and the people of Grenville, Grenada, we're supporting you, we're behind you, and continue to educate the youths of Grenada. Have a blessed rainy day, Blossom. Thank you.
Thank you. You do the same. Response?
Thank you, caller. Not so much, just to say thank you very much, caller, for the kind words.
A WhatsApp question. Somebody on WhatsApp says, is the youth at your meetings calling on people to get vaccinated?
Right. It's a good question. So probably what we can do, we can partner with independent groupings. And if there are young people in some of those independent groupings that want to contribute in that conversation, they can be encouraged to do so. You can contact any one of the speakers at the public meetings to pass on your information to the relevant person, and you could be included. In other words, we are not discriminating on issues. What we are saying is that we have problems and we need solutions. And if the immediate solution is vaccination, but the wrong message is being sent out there by the wrong messengers, then what we are calling for is young people to take up the mantle wherever they see the deficit and contribute to setting that right, etc. Because as I said, if you're keeping us out of a situation where we are over 60% in terms of prevalence, we make up that amount in terms of the population, and you're keeping us out and only want us for piecemeal things, eventually that is going to pop, and young people are going to go and form their own thing where they are comfortable to spread those messages. So if there are young people who have concerns with vaccinations and so on, join us. That's not an issue.
Another question on WhatsApp. What are your plans to involve youth at the community level to address the high unemployment among youth in the nation? And do you have plans to mark International Youth Day in August 2021?
Yes. So the plans are not finalized, but from a personal aspect, I believe that, for example, World Skills Day, International Youth Day, these are days that must be enshrined, not only at the level of communities, but enshrined within our laws of Grenada, meaning that if we have this high percentage of young people, the laws, the necessary acts and so on that goes to Parliament, they must promote that way of life. So, for example, the establishment of a National Youth and Student Council. During my tenure as a senator, I have met with government ministers, I have met with other government officials to speak about that possibility. Of course, the rest is history. I did not last, but the point is, efforts and steps were being made. I also believe at the level of community, the National Youth Council must be incorporated into constituency assemblies, local government setting type of thing, so that the idea of the different tiers of leadership and young people contributing to those different tiers of leadership could be enhanced, could be promoted. I want to see more of that because the economy is too centered around one government and one man and that kind of thing. You need to decentralize decision making because the people who are impacted in Tebaid, they are not going to be represented automatically at a national level. So therefore you need them to have their autonomy in making decisions. If a drain is blocked, how do we proceed? Where do we get the resources from? That sort of thing. And I think that young people can lead that. The older guards, no offense to them, but they are too comfortable in having all the authority and power. And this thing is not benefiting the wider community and country.
Good morning, caller.
Good morning, sweetheart. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Ms. Jeremiah?
I'm doing great, sweetheart. Mr. Redhead, good morning. I really want to congratulate you because I think you have impressed me a lot. And I have a question that I posted, but I don't know if it's going to get read, so I have the opportunity to ask you. Now, do you believe that a cloud of evil covers well-articulated people who have very good intention and have a heart for this country when they get into politics or when they get into parliament? Because we find a lot of people, you hear them talk so articulately, you hear them talk so good, you're so impressed. But when they get into that place of the political arena, you wonder if it's the same people. So I'm wondering if there is a cloud of evil that covers them and make them evil or make them whatever they become. And I am believing it's because we have refused to let God rule in our lives and in our political lives and in our political arena. The devil comes in and do all kinds of things. Greed for money, greed for power, because they say power, complete, absolute power corrupt, absolutely. And so we think that is what's happening. What are your thoughts? Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Thank you, Sister Jeremiah. So I believe in what you're saying there, because I believe at all the times you will have different forces, good versus evil, but it's about finding a balance and striking the balance. So for example, leaders will start off good, but they get corrupted by the power. So what you need is checks and balances to keep that power in check, one, on a constitutional level, and then on a spiritual level. That individual must have a good spouse, right? So let's say it's a male, he must have a good female support that believes in God, etc., and is a positive spirit in his life. He must have children or a child that he values and will not do corrupt things to put that child's image in jeopardy. In other words, these are the balances that must be struck. So you can't go into office or power or holding power and all you see is that, because it's going to corrupt you. You're going to do things to remain there. You're going to have people who are egging you on to do certain things and they will support it, etc. So you have to be able to strike that balance between good and evil as you go forward. I am not highly religious as an individual. I must confess that my grandmother, may her soul rest in peace, will be upset with me saying so. But generally, I believe in doing good. And if you are placed in an area of darkness, but you are deep down good, that good must be accentuated. You must ensure that wherever you go, you leave good things. Don't let people have bad things to say about you. And you must always be humble and honest, because the issue with power, most people who are powerful are not humble, and they see themselves as a god on earth. This is a dangerous pattern. And Grenada had its own brushes with that. Our Prime Minister Gary, and then we had our Prime Minister Morris Bishop. They both were different, but at the same time, they both saw the issue to consolidate power and stamp the authority. We currently have that situation today with the regime of Dr. Mitchell, and that is something that we want to stamp out and get rid of. So it has nothing to do with him personally. And I share the point that Sister Jeremiah is saying, but my answer to that is we need a balance. We need a balance of forces, good versus evil, and balance the two.
There is a WhatsApp question. Was it WhatsApp? Yes, WhatsApp. Somebody said, I heard Kem Jones say that the youths have chosen Ron as the leader of the NDC. Would you be contesting that position when the NDC is having their convention?
My answer to that is no. I have said so to Brother Kim. I have said so to the management of the party who asked such a question. The truth is, people are free to say what they want. And if Grenadians see something in somebody, they will call for it. I am humbled by that. But for me personally, I do not see holding the position of leader is the end to it all. NDC requires a team at this moment, and I want to contribute to building that team wherever we go. And whoever is decided as the leader in the final analysis, I will support him or her 110%. That is my guarantee. And if it is that people have called for youth and so on, I would support that initiative as well. But at present, I am not campaigning. I am not trying to undermine. I am not going around in communities and groupings and settings and speaking with people to become the leader of NDC. NDC has its process, and we will follow that process. Leadership does not dictate in that sense to be aggressive and so on. No, given our history as a party. So I want to support and contribute to the development of a team, not necessarily say that I am the best person or candidate for the job. No.
And the final question we may have time for this morning, a question on Facebook. Most young people are seeing you as their icon in a young Morris Bishop to lead them in the next election, along with others around your age. The question, do you see yourself as the next Morris Bishop? And what message do you have for young people who do not believe in the politicians and feel they are always telling lies and in it for what it is?
Right. My message is that it is true. Politicians tell a lot of lies. That is, and I am very frank and straightforward. They tell a lot of lies. This is where I believe the younger generation have to step in and change that. So I believe that a message I can give that is best suited for all young activists, all young people who may have second thoughts in joining politics, whether the professionals or the unskilled or skilled grouping, you all must contribute to that change which you seek. If we see politicians are telling lies, let us try to develop and support groupings and politicians or political activists that are telling the truth. And just note well that eventually when the time comes and we have to make a decision, we are making the decision not based on bribes and all these other fancy talk and lies and so on, but we are making it because we believe this person is going to represent the interest of young people, is going to represent the interest of a particular area, and will help to move the thing forward. Because we need to see progressive changes, not just this old talk, oil and gas and these kinds of things. We have had enough of that. And as young people, the quest for change must continue. So I would say join in that quest. Join in that quest. And no. The truth is, my father, Martin Redhead, the late Martin Redhead, may his soul rest in peace, was a part of the revolution. And he grew me up in politics. I do not know if I have direct teachings from what they would have learned from Morris and all the other code and all the other individuals involved in the politics. But this is me genuinely, and this is how I operate. Many people can tell you I do not like oppression, and when people try to hold down people's rights and so on and take advantage of people. Since school days, I was like that, and I continue like that. So I believe and see myself as a reformer and a liberator in many respects in different things. So I don't see myself as the next Morris Bishop or no. That is not crossing my mind. But I am humbled by the suggestion. Morris was a great man, and I think that was a special era, and we may never get that back. We may never see a repeat of that because of how it ended. So long live Morris. Long live the revolution.
Any final thoughts as we wrap, Mr. Redhead?
Well, just to say that we are coming to the hurricane season. I am very concerned as to what may occur if a serious hurricane threatens any one of the Caribbean islands. And as a Caribbean people, as a region, we must continue to up our game during the fight of COVID-19 and also be vigilant in the upcoming hurricane season. The people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we stand in solidarity with you during your struggle with the La Soufrière volcano. I have personally spoken to the Minister of Finance there, that's Brother Gonzalez and Camilo, and they understand that Grenadians are there and we are supporting. They are one of our closest neighbors next to Trinidad and Tobago, and we are with them during their difficulty. I also empathize with the situation at Trinidad and Tobago with the spike in COVID-19, and I wish Dr. Rowley and his government and people all the very best as they continue to fight that effort. To the Grenadians, one love.
I like that. One love. Thank you very much, Mr. Redhead. Appreciate it. As always well spoken, and you're getting a lot of kudos on the social media. Thank you so much for being with us today, and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Continue to do what you're doing. Stay dry.
Thank you.
All right. Youth activist and former Senator Ron Redhead, we thank him so much for being our guest this morning. Always a pleasure to hear from him. And thank you, viewers and listeners, for tuning in to The Point. Always appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of your rainy Tuesday. Continue to be safe. And I'll be back tomorrow morning, God willing. Joseph is up next with Mid-Morning Buzz. Enjoy the rest.